Hello, everyone. Let's start our today's discussion. I hope you all remember that in previous class, we discussed question number 2 of specimen exam of advanced audit and assurance. Today, we will be reviewing a very important document which is issued by our AAA examiner. Read the mind of a marker. In this document, the examiner has provided us with answers of two students. Answer number 1 is by a student who got very good marks. And answer number 2 is by a student who didn't perform well. Both of the answers are marked by the examiner, and proper guidance is given that on which point the examiner gave a mark. This document will give a very good guidance that how we have to draft the points and how we have to target the marks in examination. We will look at both of these answers. We will discuss that how the examiner gave mark on each of the points. Then we will also review the answer which we developed in the previous class. We will also look at the examiner answer and marking scheme. Many students ask this question that, sir, we are not able to write like the examiner answer. So I always say to them that examiner answer is not written in exam pressure and time limitation. You can never write 100% like the examiner answer. You have to look at the marking scheme. You have to look at the points covered in the examiner answer, and you have to make sure that you write in a reasonable length. If you will try to write like the examiner, it will only create stress and it will affect your time management in examination. So let's look at this document and understand that how candidate 1 gained good marks. Okay, so let's start. Read the mind of an AAA marker. Now, this document is not issued for all the past papers. It is only issued for specimen paper of advanced audit and assurance. Today, we are discussing question number 2 in this document. Once we'll discuss question number 3, we'll discuss this document for question number 3 also. We have already discussed this document for question number 1. Okay, when we completed our question number 1, which you can find in series of videos. Now, first the introduction is given that what this document is about. Now, let's move towards the script of the question number of the student 1. Now, specimen exam answer marked by the examiner, and this is the answer of candidate 1. Okay. Now, for every point, the examiner has highlighted it and given the notes that how he has given mark for each of the points. Okay. What we'll do is that we'll do a quick review of the question first, and then we'll read the answers so that you people can pick up the points. Okay. Now, let's go to our exam software and read the question once. We have already discussed this question in detail in the previous class. So if anyone lacks understanding about the question or the scenario, you can refer our previous recording in which we discussed this question. And we have also developed the answer of this question. Okay. In today's class, we are just reviewing the question one time again, and then we will look at the points which this candidate 1 developed, and then we will look at the notes that how the examiner marked for each of the point. Okay, let's look at it. Let's do a fast review of the question first of all, so that when we read the answer, you people can recall the scenario points. It is 1st July 2005. You are an audit manager in Walford & Company, a firm of chartered certified accountants. Your role includes performing post-issuance audit quality reviews, and you have been asked to review the audit work performed on Rivers Company for the financial year ended 31st January 2005. If you people remember, in this question, we had to discuss quality control, ethical and professional issues, and also the actions to be taken, because we were doing the post-issuance audit quality review. Post-issuance means that the audit report has already been issued and we are doing the later part review. The following exhibits available on the left-hand side of the screen provide information relevant to the question. Exhibit 1, team and fees. Information regarding the audit team composition, the time spent on the audit, and fees charged to the client. Exhibit 2, going concern, details some matters you have identified during your review of going concern section of the audit file. So this was an introduction of the question, that what this question is about. We are doing a post-issuance audit quality review, and there are 2 exhibits provided which we have to review. So the first exhibit is team and fees. Now, Reverse Company is a listed company operating in the construction industry. The company complies with corporate governance regulations and has an audit committee. Reverse Company has been an audit client of Walford Company for 8 years, and Bob Newbold has been the audit engagement partner during this time. If you people remember, we identified this issue in the previous class, that the same partner is doing audit for 8 years. In case of listed companies, single audit partner cannot do audit for more than 7 consecutive years. The audit partner need to be rotated. Okay, so we are reading the scenario. I am saying again that we have already read and discussed this scenario in detail in the previous class. So in today's class, the objective is not to evaluate the scenario. The objective is to understand the writing approach and learn the mistakes which you people do while drafting the answer. I'm just looking at the requirements so that I can refer the answer which is given. Evaluate the quality of the planning and performance of the audit of Reverse Company, discussing the quality management, ethical and other professional issues raised, and recommending actions to be taken. Okay, so we have to look at quality control, ethics, professional issues, and actions to be taken. 20 marks. And then there are 5 professional marks relating to analysis and evaluation, professional skepticism and judgment, and commercial acumen. Now, see, we read this first paragraph in which the issue is that Bob Newbold, who is the audit engagement partner, has been doing audit for continuous 8 years. Okay, Reverse Company audit report was signed by Bob Newbold and issued last week. The report contained an unmodified opinion. Now, if you people remember, I told you people that it was very important to look at the fact that the report has already been issued. Okay, so the breach has already been done of the ethical code. Now you cannot say that go and refer the second partner review, because that should have been done before the report was issued. Now see, how candidate 1 is the candidate who got the best marks in this question. Okay, he got around 22 marks in this question number 1 out of 25. Now let's look at it, that how he covered this point. Now, Bob Newbold is the audit partner in the engagement for 8 years. Considering that Reverse Company complies with relevant corporate governance rules, there may be a risk for breaching it. For listed companies, the IESBA code states that audit partner should rotate from the engagement after 7 consecutive years. Given the fact that audit report is issued, the audit team must inform immediately the person in charge with governance at Reverse Company and discuss whether this can be a potential breach of regulation. As of next year, Bob should rotate from the engagement for at least 5 consecutive years. Now, if you look at this paragraph, he has written it in a very limited manner. That, okay, 7 years, he has been doing audit for more than 7 years. It's a breach of a regulation and we should report it to those charged with governance. Now, just look at it, that how many marks were given on this first paragraph. Listen to me carefully. Note number 1, 1 mark awarded for identification of breach of code and application to the scenario. Given the fact that audit report is issued, the audit team must inform immediately the person in charge with governance and discuss whether this can be a potential breach of regulation. So 1 mark awarded for identifying that there is a breach of ethical code and relating it to the scenario that, okay, the report has been issued. Now see, it's not just 1 mark for this paragraph. Look at it. Another mark. Look at note number 2. 1 mark awarded for analysis and evaluation. Here the candidate has appraised the evidence in the scenario and advised on the appropriate course of action in the circumstances. See, you got 1 more professional mark. Now, this professional mark was given because you related to the scenario that, okay, the audit report has been issued. So now what we can do is that we can discuss it with those charged with governance about the breach of this regulation. Okay, look further. Another note. 1 mark awarded for recommendation of rotation of audit partner with time scale. As of next year, Bob should rotate from audit engagement partner for at least 5 consecutive years. So if you look at it, this one small paragraph got 3 marks for you. Okay. If you look at note 4, in that he's moving towards the next paragraph. Okay. So this one small paragraph earned 3 marks in the examination. You identified the breach of regulation. You referred a proper course of action that, okay, the report has been issued, so we should discuss it with those charged with governance. And then you identified that from next year, Bob Newbold should be rotated for at least 5 years. Now see, very important for those students who say that, sir, what should be the length of the answer? See, this one paragraph gave you 3 marks. Now let's go and look how we wrote it in the previous class. If you look at my answer, we are writing more than this candidate 1, because it's my habit to break small paragraphs so that you can, I would say, get a milestone that, okay, 1 mark for each paragraph. So that's why we break it in small paragraphs. Now, Bob Newbold has been doing audit for Reverse Company as an audit engagement partner for 8 years. It is against IESBA code. As in case of listed company, the audit engagement partner can work for maximum 7 years. Okay, this 1 mark. Then we referred that, okay, Bob Newbold should be rotated from the audit for next 5 years. Then we identified self-interest threat. Then we identified familiarity threat. Okay, we referred issues relating to self-interest and familiarity. Let's see that whether the candidate 1 used this approach. So if you look at it, for being an audit partner at a company in 7 consecutive years, it indicates that familiarity threat may exist. As Bob Newbold have a good relationship with client management. For example, high additional non-audit assurance engagements are given for excessive fees. If you remember, he was provided with non-audit service also. This good relationship can result in that audit team may not identify matters as the quality and quantity of the audit procedures will reduce. Example, independence of non-audit work where the audit file relies upon a brief confirmation of the audit partner. For avoiding such a risk, in this case, usually a second partner review is necessary on the audit file. So we advise that normally this should be done. So see, he also identified the familiarity threat. He related it that it creates familiarity due to non-audit services also. And then he referred a very good thing. This good relationship can result in that audit team may not identify matters as the quantity and quality of audit procedures will reduce. Example, independency of the non-audit work, where the audit file relies upon a brief confirmation of the audit file. Because it was written, if you look at the scenario, it was written that in case of special investigation, the audit team, the only information you can find in the audit documentation is the non-audit work related to special investigation, and the Bob confirms that it does not create a threat to objectivity. So the entire audit team relied on a small statement of the partner. So he is relating it very well that, okay, the entire audit team relied on a small statement of the audit partner. Now let's see how many marks are given in this one paragraph. 1 mark for awarded for analysis and evaluation. The candidate has appropriately assessed the ethical and professional issue raised using example where relevant to support overall comment for safeguard. C. Another mark. 1 mark awarded for familiarity identified and explained in respect of the scenario. So 1 mark for giving proper examples, applying it to the scenario, then 1 more mark for familiarity. Look further. 1 more mark. 1 mark awarded for safeguard to ethical and professional issues. That normally whenever there are such issues, we go for second partner review. Okay. In this case, usually a second partner review is necessary on the audit file. But obviously the audit report has already been issued. So we identified that this was a quality issue, that no second partner was reviewed in this situation. No second partner review was done in this situation, which was a quality issue. Because normally in such situations of familiarity, a second partner review should have been done. Now, if you look at note number 7, now he's moving towards the next paragraph. So this one paragraph also enabled you 3 marks. Now from the next paragraph, he is moving towards the time. As audit engagement should be appropriately planned, directed, and reviewed, considering the hours recorded. So from this third paragraph, listen to me. From this third paragraph, he is moving towards this timing. Okay. So now in these 2 paragraphs, he has earned 6 marks. In these 2 paragraphs relating to the long association, he wrote this paragraph 1 and this paragraph 2. Because this third paragraph is on the hours spent on the audit. Okay. Considering the hours recorded and the timesheet. This timesheet matters are included here. So in the first 2 paragraphs relating to long association, he gained 6 marks. Now let's see how we drafted in the previous class. We referred the familiarity issue. We also referred the non-audit work issue, that there will be too much non-audit work. Okay. We also referred the issue of self-interest threat, that due to long association, there can be issue of self-interest also. And then we referred the firm's client acceptance and policy issues. Now you can make a question that, sir, you wrote some of the points which candidate 1 did not include in his answer. Like the client acceptance policies and procedures need to be reviewed because the audit engagement partner should not be permitted to perform audit for 8 consecutive years. Okay, when it is against ethical code. Okay, 8 consecutive time, firm's client acceptance procedures should have highlighted it. Now we included this point. We included this issue of self-interest threat also, which is not included by this candidate 1. So now I want you to guide to a very important document. See, this is the examiner answer, which you people normally refer. Now I will take you to the end of this document where the marking scheme is given. See, I always say to my students that marking scheme issued by the examiner is more important than the answer written by the examiner. Generally, up to 1 mark for each well-explained point. Long association of audit partner breaches the IESBA code, 1 mark. Self-interest threat identified and explained, 1 mark. Familiarity threat identified and explained, 1 mark. Recommend replace Bob with a new audit partner as soon as possible, 1 mark. Firm's monitoring of the length of the time partner act for the client seems deficient, that the firm's monitoring procedures, the client acceptance procedures are deficient. So if you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 points, they are included in the marking scheme. Then audit partner should have spent more time on the audit and in particular on the final review. Now this timing issue is referred in the timesheet, which we haven't referred yet. We are currently focusing on these 2 paragraphs only. Sir, where are the professional marks? Where are the professional marks included in this marking scheme? If you will move it down, here are the professional marks. Analysis and evaluation. Appropriate assessment of ethical and professional issues raised using examples where relevant to support overall comments. So like the example that there are too many non-audit services being given. effective appraisal of the information to make suitable recommendations that we have to talk with those charged with governance, professional skepticism and judgment, commercial acumen. So you need to understand the marking scheme. Now, if you look at the candidate one answer, see in these two paragraphs only, you got 6 marks. Now let's go and look at the examiner answer of the question number 2. I will attach these documents also. So if you want, you can review them later on also. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the examiner answer for the same question, reverse company. A review of the information relating to the audit of reverse company indicates many problems with how the audit has been planned and performed, which implies that audit has not been conducted in accordance with ISA 220, quality management for an audit of financial statements, ISQM1, quality management for firms that perform audit or reviews of financial statement or other assurance or related service engagements. Now here there is a very important question of many students. That, sir, is it necessary to give the references of all the auditing standards and all the quality standards? So I always say to my students that these references are not mandatory. If you give them, it's good. But if you will not give these references, there will be no marks reduction. You have looked at the marking scheme. There were no references included in the marking scheme, nor any such references are included in the candidate one answer, in which in the first 2 paragraphs he got 6 marks. No reference of any ISA number, no reference of any quality standard. This applies for accounting standards also. If you remember the numbers, you write it, it's good. But if you don't write, there will be no deduction. But please make sure that don't give wrong references. If you give a wrong reference, then it will create a problem, because then it will affect the validity of your argument. Okay. So these references of auditing standards and quality management, these are not mandatory. The examiner only expects that the student should have the knowledge that what these standards are saying. He should know the rules and the concepts which he should demonstrate in his answer. Then for audit partner rotation, if you look at the examiner answer, Bob Newbold has been acting as an audit engagement partner for 8 years. As reverse company is a listed company, this goes against the requirements of the code, which requires that an individual shall not act as an engagement partner for more than 7 years. So if you look at the examiner answer, he's also using the similar approach. He's also trying to cover the marking scheme. But obviously the examiner's wordings and his presentation is of very high caliber. But this is primarily due to a reason that this answer is not drafted in time pressure. Look at the answer of the candidate, which is drafted in the time pressure. It is just like answer two people draft. Brief, good reasons, and justifications of whatever you are writing. Okay, so don't waste your lot of time in trying and copying the examiner. What you need to make sure is that you cover the marking scheme. And yes, the examiner answers are good for preparation. You can borrow some points. That is always important. But what I'm trying to make it clear here is that don't try to write completely like an examiner. Because then what will happen is that your time management will get affected, because examiner writes too much. Okay. So then audit partner rotation, he also referred that it's more than 7 years, so it's an issue. It's a breach of ISBA code. Then he referred self-interest threat issue. Okay. So he wrote 3 good paragraphs on this. So we also did similar approach. And if you look at my answer, it was drafted in a very good manner that I have broken my answer in small paragraphs. Okay. So if we read further and we try and understand that what the examiner is saying. Walford Company requires its staff to record each hour they spend working on each client in the firm's time management system. From reviewing the time records relating to the audit of reverse company, you are aware that Bob and other audit team members recorded the following amount of time on audit. Bob Newbold only spent 2 hours, senior audit manager spent 6 hours, Anissa Kintin spent 35 hours, and 6 audit assistants spent 130 hours. If you remember, in the previous class, we highlighted this issue that entire audit was done in 173 hours. Now, it's a listed client. 173 hours for an audit of listed client are very less. I explained you in the previous class also, like if there are 8 hours in a working day, so 173 hour means that if you divide, it will be like completing the audit in 25 days or 23 days. If you divide 173 hours by 8 hours working on each day, so it will be like 23, 24 days in completion of entire audit of listed client. Obviously, this is very less time. For listed clients, the audit continues for like 2 to 3 months. 173 hours for total audit was very less. If you remember, we wrote this point also. It is apparent from your review that almost all of the detailed review of working paper was completed by Anissa Quintin, who has advised her review as final review on each stage of the audit file. She has recently been promoted to audit manager. So we identified this issue also, that a new audit manager is doing final review. Why not the senior audit manager or audit engagement partner doing such a review? So let's look at how candidate one drafted the points on. An audit engagement partner should be appropriately planned. An audit engagement should be appropriately planned, directed, and reviewed. Considering the hours recorded on the timesheet by the senior team member, it can be questionable whether the necessary reviews, 4I review means a review done by a supervisor, an audit manager, a senior audit manager, and then the audit partner, reviews at each level had occurred. This is supported by the fact that freshly promoted manager without sufficient experience could mark audit procedures as final. The lack of sufficient level of review during the audit engagement may have negative impact on the quality of the audit. In such case, spotting the potentially unreviewed elements of the file would suggest an additional review of these files should be performed. So very less hours performed by the audit partner and the senior audit manager. Most of the reviews were done by the audit manager, and this shows the concerns for quality. Now see, he has drafted one paragraph on this. Now, how many marks on this one paragraph? Okay, let's read note number 7. 1 mark awarded for identification and explanation of the planning review issue on the engagement. That this is supported by the fact that freshly promoted manager did the review. So we raised a concern that a new manager is doing the review. So there is issue in review of the engagement, 1 mark for it. Then let's read another note. Note A. 1 mark awarded. 1 mark awarded for professional skepticism and judgment. The candidate has appropriately applied professional judgment to draw conclusion and make informed comment regarding the quality of the audit. Now see, where he highlighted that lack of review means that quality of the audit was compromised. So this gave you the mark for professional judgment, the professional skill mark. Okay, let's see note number 9. 1 mark awarded for safeguard to ethical and professional risk that additional reviews of this file should be performed. That despite the audit report has been issued, the quality issue exists that this file should have been reviewed earlier. And even after the report has been issued, we should look at the files if there are any issues which are in public interest and they have to be notified to the users, we should notify them. So in this one paragraph, 3 marks were awarded. Now, if we look at note number 10, it is moving towards next paragraph. Now, here are ways of concern that this candidate one referred very less points. He only referred 2 things. That, okay, the audit manager is doing review, that junior manager, and he formed a conclusion that there will be a negative impact on quality of the audit. Whereas, if you look at our answer, we highlighted the fact that partners spend very less time. We highlighted the fact that total audit was done in very less time. We referred this junior manager issue. Because if you refer the answer which we drafted in the last class, the total time spent issue, we started here from 1 point, second, third, fourth. Okay, we identified 4th point here. Total time spent on river company audit is just 173 hours. It is insufficient time to perform audit of listed company. The candidate one missed this point. Okay, it creates a concern for quality of audit performed as sufficient and appropriate audit evidences may have not been obtained to support the opinion. we also made a judgment that since very less time is given to the audit, which means that the sufficient and appropriate evidences may not have been obtained. Then further audit partner and senior audit manager spent very less time. This creates a concern that review of working papers may not have been performed well by the audit partner. Okay. Then final review of working papers were done by the junior audit manager. Okay. And we also refer the fact that it also needs to be considered that no time was spent by quality control partner. So we identified few additional issues also. That the entire audit was done in 173 hours, which was insufficient. We identified the fact that partner and senior managers spent very less time. We identified that junior managers shouldn't be doing the review. And we highlighted the fact that there was no review done by quality control partner. Now, if you compare it with the answer of candidate one, he only referred the fact that the junior manager did the review. And he formed a conclusion that, okay, the audit was not done with sufficient quality. So if we go and look at the marking scheme, okay, now let's look at the marking scheme relating to the paragraphs we have just read. Okay, so now if we go to the marking scheme and refer the relevant points, now we'll start from this bullet because the starting points were relating to the long association of the part. Now, audit partners should have spent more time on the audit and in particular on the final review. So we also referred this point in our answer that audit partner only spent 2 hours. The total amount of time spent on the audit appears low for the audit of a listed company. Implications for audit quality. That the entire audit was just done in 173 hours. Okay, as I referred that the entire audit in 173 hours means that if it is an 8 hours working day, it only means 23, 24 days, which is very less for completing the audit of a listed company. Then inappropriate delegation of tasks, the junior audit manager lacks experience. So if you look at the answers and then you refer the marking scheme, while drafting the answers, what you need to try is that the points which you are including in the answer are also included in the marking scheme. Your points should be relevant and you should evaluate it in the detail. Okay. If we look at the examiner answer relating to this issue, okay, supervision and review. I will include these documents in the attachments also, so you can run through the documents easily. Supervision and review. Bob Newbold has only booked 2 hours for audit work performed. This is not sufficient time for audit partner to perform their duties adequately. The audit partner is required to take overall responsibility for supervision and the performance of the audit. So if you look at the examiner answer, he explains too much. But as you have looked on the candidate one answer, which is marked by the examiner, it is not necessary to write in that much detail. Then the examiner also gave the reference of the ISA. Again, that is not mandatory. Okay. So all of this information is included in this supervision and review paragraphs. So what I'm trying to teach you people is that it is not necessary to write exactly like an examiner, because examiner answer is not written in time pressure and in the exam situation. It is written in a relaxed situation when someone is thinking and drafting in a very good manner. But when you go to the paper, there is a lot of stress and you cannot draft in that much detail and that much excellence. Okay, you will write like a student, like he has written here. Okay, but here I would like to highlight one thing, that candidate one has written very less points, like at some areas he's missing the points, and for that reason he will lose some technical marks. Okay, like here he missed the point for 173 hours. He missed the point that audit partner performed very less review. Okay. Similarly, above, he missed the point for self-interest rate also. He missed the point about the firm's policies and controls. Okay. Now let's read the question further. I hope that you people are understanding that what I'm trying to teach by this session is that while drafting the answer, you don't have to take stress. Just read the scenario, you try and identify the best possible points, and you give reasoning for that. Now, you are also aware that Bob Newbold booked a total of 40 hours to reverse company in respect of non-audit work performed. The only information you can find in the documentation is that the non-audit work related to special investigation. and that Bob confirms that it does not create a threat to auditors' objectivity. Complete explanation is not given about the non-audit service performed, and the documentation is also insufficient. The total fees charged for the audit was 250,000, and the fees for special investigation was 890,000. Now let's see how candidate one drafted the point on. Okay. A self-interest threat may arise with respect to non-audit engagement as the charge for engagement is higher. For a listed entity, according to the legislation, the total fees of non-audit service should not exceed 70% of the audit fees, because otherwise it will create impact of dependency. In such case, the non-audit engagement may have greater importance from the audit firm point of view and may not allocate the experienced team members to this engagement. This can result in a situation when the auditor does not have the capacity to take the necessary reviews, does not perform all procedures required, and does not make the appropriate conclusions due to losing the fees. So he gave a very well-explained point on self-interest, that the non-audit service was given, its fees was also very high, and that creates a dependency issue. Okay, he just wrote this one paragraph. After that, he moved towards going concern issue. So as I told earlier, this candidate one has missed many of the technical points, but still he's getting good marks. Okay, now let's read that how many marks were given in this paragraph. 2 marks awarded for the threat, well explained and relevant to the scenario. He explained the self-interest threat, he related it to the scenario that, okay, the fees was very high, it will create the dependency. Now let's look at the next note. Now here he moved towards the going concern issue. Now in this paragraph, he just got 2 marks because he just picked one issue of self-interest. Now, if we look at our answer, which we wrote, we identified many points here. If you look at it, we identified many good points here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 points. Bob Newbold has also provided non-audit service to reverse company. This is against ethical code, as in case of listed company, non-audit service relating to financial services, financial statements are not permitted. 1 mark. The candidate one missed this point. Further documentation relating to audit of reverse company is also incomplete, as in relation to non-audit work, complete details are not included in audit working papers. It is only written that the partner is saying that there is no issue. An ethical concern exists in relation to Bob Newbold's lack of disclosure about non-audit service. We highlighted the fact that the partner himself is hiding information. Then we highlighted that the amount of fees for non-audit work performed by Bob Newbold creates an ethical issue, as it is much greater than audit fees. He also referred this issue in his answer. And then lastly, he referred that this non-audit fees may create an issue of fees dependency, the self-interest threat. Now I'm saying again, we have already developed this answer in the previous class. So if anyone want to revise the answer which we wrote, you have to go back and look at the previous class record. Now let's look at the marking scheme, that whether in the marking scheme, all of the points which we wrote were included or not. Now, yes, we'll start from here. Welfare company may have been prohibited non-audit service of reverse company or listed company. In case of listed company, we cannot provide non-audit services. The size for the audit fees creates self-interest threat. Okay. Bob's involvement with non-audit service creates familiarity threat to objectivity. Lack of documentation could indicate that no work has been performed, possibly a bribe from the client, that why documentation is missing. It creates concern on integrity of the client. Okay. Welfare company to review policies, procedures, and documentation on engagement acceptance, that why these engagements are getting accepted. Welfare company to review policies, apparent lack of engagement quality review being carried out before the audit opinion was issued. We wrote this point earlier, that there was no quality partner review. If you remember, we wrote this point when we were writing this point relating to the time spent, that there was no quality control partner review being done. So if you look at the marking scheme, we have covered many of the points, like this prohibited point. Okay, we referred the size of this issue. We didn't included the point on familiarity. Okay, but we referred the point on lack of documentation. Okay, we referred that the firm's policies and procedures are not good. We wrote it earlier that the firm's client acceptance procedures are not good. Appropriate, apparent lack of engagement quality review being carried out. We wrote this point also. So if you look at the candidate one answer, he's getting good points, marks, despite that he's missing some technical marks, despite he's not covering the entire marking scheme. But through candidate one answer, what you need to understand is that in just a small paragraph, like 4 lines, he got 2 marks. Okay. Now let's look at the specimen answer of the examiner, that how much the examiner wrote on this special investigation. Just look at Bob Newbold focus appears to have been on special investigation on which he booked 40 hours. Insufficient document as the nature of the audit work, and it could relate to provision of non-audit services which is not allowed for listed entity. Reverse company is a listed company and code prohibits the audit firm from providing non-audit services. Then he referred the fees. Then he referred the right of self-interest. Okay. So the examiner answer is very much detailed. Again, the examiner answer can give you good guidance on how you have to include the points, but don't exactly copy the examiner answer. Okay. So candidate one answer gives us an indication that we don't have to write in too much detail. But obviously, if you look at the marking scheme, he's missing some of the points. And for that reason, he will lose marks in the total. Okay. Now, if you look at my answer, we have tried to be brief. Like we write 2-3 lines for each mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We wrote 5 points in this issue, which were included in the marking scheme also. I hope that you people are getting it. Then the question moves towards issue of going concern. Okay. Again, I will say that we have already read this question in the previous class. So if anyone thinks that, okay, the sir is not reading the question in that much detail, I'll say that we have already recorded a 1.5 hour class on analyzing this question. So you can go and look at the previous recording if you want to understand the question in detail. Okay. The objective of today's class is just to understand that how much we have to write in the exam. From reviewing the audit working papers, you are aware that going concern was identified as a significant audit risk at the planning stage of audit due to low profit margins or losses being made on the company's construction contract and increasing economic uncertainty. The company has 20 contracts ongoing at any time. Most of the audit work on going concern was performed by Mary Locksley, an audit assistant who has just taken her last professional exam and is not yet qualified. The majority of the audit work performed on going concern focused on review of 5 major contracts to determine their profitability. Now, we identified this issue that audit assistant is doing audit of going concern, and even that audit assistant is not qualified. Despite that, going concern was highlighted as a significant audit risk. Then only 5 contracts were reviewed out of 20 contracts. When it was a significant risk, you should have reviewed greater contracts. The management of reverse company identified those contracts. That was also an issue. That management shouldn't be identifying the contract. Sampling should be done by the auditor and provided Mary with forecast indicating that contracts would all make a small profit. Mary confirmed the assumptions used in the forecast, agreed the assumptions used in previous year. So we also identified the issue here that previous year will not be a true indicator because this year the company is facing problem. So you shouldn't be comparing it to the past. You should be comparing it with the market data. Mary also used the firm's data analytics tools to confirm the arithmetical accuracy. So we identified this issue also, that data analytics tools are not just for arithmetical accuracy. You can perform some good sensitivity analysis also through data analytics. And that the assumptions set by the management had been appropriately reflected in the forecast. Following this work, Mary concluded that contracts which she had reviewed support the going concern status. Having reviewed these major contracts, Mary completed the conclusion on going concern, stating that there is no significant uncertainty. Mary commented that due to effectiveness of data analytics tool, she only had to record 8 hours. So if you remember this exhibit, we identified many points in this. First, the audit assistant is doing audit of going concern when it was a significant issue. She is even not qualified. We should have delegated more team members and experienced team members. Only 5 contracts were reviewed out of 20. When it was a significant risk, we should have reviewed greater contracts. Those contracts were selected by management. Sampling should have been done by auditor. Data analytics tool was only used for accuracy. If you look here, Mary used the data analytics tool to confirm the mathematical accuracy of the forecast, and the assumptions set out by the management had been appropriately reflected in the forecast. So he didn't use the data analytics tool to do sensitivity analysis. He compared the assumption with previous years only. He should have referred to the market data. Then we referred that only 8 hours were spent on going concern. Reliance was only done on data analytics tools. Other audit procedures were not used. So there were multiple issues in this exhibit. Let's look at how many issues the candidate one identified from. As far as audit work in relation to going concern is concerned, the assigned audit team member clearly does not have sufficient skills and experience on evaluation of going concern situation. Further, procedures performed may not be appropriate. For example, examining 5 contracts suggested by management out of 20 may result in auditor could not gain objective evidence regarding the performance of the contract, as management is likely to send those contracts which will be in good shape. The additional contract should be obtained and inspect whether the terms can be satisfied by reverse company in future. So this is the paragraph. Now let's read the comments on it. Now, 0 mark awarded for professional skepticism and judgment. Now why? Due to maximum marks awarded earlier, point above. See, we have already identified that the audit was not done with the quality. So the judgment relating to quality was already done. So the professional mark is not given. The technical marks will be provided. The professional mark relating to judgment is not given. The candidate has appropriately applied judgment to draw conclusion and make informed comments regarding the quality of the work carried out. The candidate has taken evidence in the scenario, explained where potential problem may arise and where the audit work or evidence is insufficient. So since this thing was already marked, this judgment thing, so it was not double marked, because professional marks are only 5. And in that, the judgment mark will be 1 or 2. And we have already scored that mark. Now let's look further. Now he's marking this paragraph. Many marks were given because this was a good paragraph. 2 marks were awarded for full identification and explanation of issue. Lack of sufficient skill of the auditor on the team and implication on the audit column. That the audit manager who was junior did review, the audit assistant did the audit of going concern. The manager thing we discussed earlier, that the manager performed the review. Currently, we are looking on going concern. So 2 marks awarded for full identification and explanation of the issue. Lack of sufficient skill of the auditor on team and the implication for audit follow. Okay. Then if you look at it, Mary validated the assumptions forecast by reconciling them to previous, which is not sufficient level of test. As the management projected a small profit for the future, it could result in, for example, that the current industry trend suggests that there is material uncertainty relating to going concern. So we highlighted that Mary should have referred the market data. So 1 mark awarded for insufficient work completed on going concern. Okay. Then 1 mark awarded for professional skepticism and judgment. The candidate effectively challenged and critically assessed the evidence supplied with appropriate conclusion. The candidate has questioned the data that, okay, Mary just looked at the past year. Mary should have looked at the industry data also. So 1 mark was awarded for it. Okay. Now, these were the total marks which were awarded to the student. Now, if you look at this candidate one answer, he has missed few points. Like if we look at our answer of going concern, we included many points relating to it. That it was delegated to inexperienced audit supervisor, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, So we included 6 points and then we formed a conclusion. He has only included few points. So first of all, we highlighted the issue that it was delegated to an inexperienced audit assistant who is not even qualified. Then we referred that only 5 contracts were reviewed out of 20. Those 5 contracts were also selected by the management. So sampling should have been done by the auditor. Then we referred that she only referred it to the previous years. Okay, she should have referred to the market data. Then we refer the fact that data analytics tool was only used to check mathematical accuracy. She should have done some sensitivity analysis and things like that. Because data analytics tool can be very much useful when you are testing going concern. It can check multiple possibilities. And then we said that only 8 hours were spent on the audit of going concern when it was a significant risk. Okay. So if you look at the marking scheme relating to going concern, see, the marking scheme relating to, yes, it starts from here. Inappropriate delegation of work on going concern to any experienced audit assistant. Sample of contracts reviewed was too small, insufficient evidences. Management selection of contract is likely to be biased. Management shouldn't be taking samples. Auditors should select the contracts. Over-reliance and misunderstanding of use of data analytics. Insufficient work on going concern. Assumptions should be challenged, not just agreed to the previous year. Data analytics could have been used to carry out specific going concern testing, such as sensitivity analysis. Lack of time spent on going concern testing due to over-reliance on data analytics. Actions to be taken, additional training is required. Client audit committee should have been notified about ethical and quality issues. Overall conclusion relating to the quality of the engagement, like we formed the overall conclusion. Okay. Now, how many marks were given to candidate 1? Okay. He was provided with 15 marks out of 25. He has lost some technical marks. There were total 20 technical marks. He only got 11 marks. Primarily, the reason being that he missed many comments, which we have included in our answer, but this candidate 1 missed out those points. Okay. In professional marks, he performed well. In analysis and evaluation, he got 2. In professional skepticism and judgment, he got 2. So out of 5 marks, he got 4 professional marks. That is good for at AAA level. Now, how this answer could have been improved? Overall, this was a good attempt by candidate, as they provided answers which were relevant to the context of the scenario. Issues were supported by evidences from the scenario, and risk and recommendations were provided, such as what audit evidences should have been supported. The candidate repeatedly challenged the information and the work. So the examiner considered this answer as a good answer. See, at AAA level, 15 out of 25 is a good marks. Okay. It's advanced audit and assurance. Okay. The position in advanced audit and assurance comes at like 70 to 73 marks. It is one of the paper with low pass rate. So 15 out of 25 is good marks. Disappointingly, there was an overall lack of reference to quality measures that should have been taken in the audit and gaps in the performance of the audit, as we identified that he has missed many points relating to the technical, the quality issues. Like if I refer to the data analytics tool, he didn't refer that data analytics tool was not used sufficiently. He didn't identify that only 8 hours were spent on going concern. So many such points were missed. Further technical credit could have been given by referencing to auditing standard, including those quality and audit evidences. Application of theoretical auditing requirements to a practical situation are also areas where professional marks can be awarded. So you could have referred more to the rules of auditing standard. See, don't confuse it that referencing to auditing standard means referring the numbers of auditing standard. Referencing to auditing standard means that you should refer the rules. Like, what do you mean by this? Like, for example, when we were writing the answer, we highlighted that the sample of the contract should have been selected by the auditor, not by the management. Sampling should have been done. Samples must be selected by the audit team. This is what the auditing standard says. Similarly, we highlighted that we shouldn't be comparing it with the past when there is economic uncertainty in the current year. Okay, so this means giving references to the auditing standard. References to auditing standard do not mean giving audit standard numbers. Okay, and then he gave us the script of candidate 2. which is in fact a very brief answer. Okay. This candidate too got how many marks if you look at it? He just got 6 marks out of 20. Okay. He missed 15 technical marks, and in professional skill marks, he also lost many marks. Because if you look at his answer, Reverse Company is a listed company and have been audited during 8 years by the same audit engagement partner. This can bring familiarity, and the company and partners should be rotated. So if you read his first paragraph, he just identified the issue of familiarity. He didn't explain that what will be the impact of this familiarity threat. And the action was also written very briefly that partners should be rotated. But despite of this, he was given marks for this first paragraph. Okay, he has identified very briefly, he didn't refer that after 7 years, it's the maximum limit as per the ethical code. We have to discuss it with those charged with governance. He didn't cover sufficient points, but still, let's look at how many marks were given on this first paragraph. Note number 1, look at it. Half mark awarded for identification of the issue, but not explained that what familiarity means. So for brief identification also he got half mark. Then the partner should be rotated. For this action he got 1 mark. Okay. Obviously he missed many of the points in this paragraph. He didn't refer the requirement of the code of ethics. Okay. That 7 years is the maximum requirement. He didn't refer that we should discuss it with those charged with governance. He didn't question the firm's client acceptance policies and procedures. Okay. Then if you look forward, as per the evidence and per our work, Anissa Kintin review almost all the detailed audit work. What is a good quality on the work even if she becomes a manager? Now, if you read this paragraph, he has not explained the issue well. Even he has not identified the issue that Anissa Kintin was the junior audit manager. She shouldn't be doing the review. He didn't refer the fact that Anissa Kintin did the final review. So if you look at it, he was not awarded any marks for this paragraph because the issue was not identified and explained in a proper manner. Then, listed companies can't have any non-audit performed by the same company and not even by the same team. See, this is partially a wrong statement. Non-audit work relating to financial statements is prohibited. Okay, this can impact independence. Also, performing audit and non-audit work can be a threat for self-review, depending on the non-audit work being performed and the work was not identified in the question. So here, identified the threat that non-audit work is related to financial statement, then self-review threat will arise. But again, it was not explained well. So half mark was awarded only, not explained well. Okay, so only the mark was awarded for identification. Then no marks were further given in this paragraph because very good explanations were not given. Okay, here also there were some good points that too much time was spent on non-audit work. Okay, if you remember our answer, if you look at my answer, we identified many good points here on the non-audit work. If you remember that here we identified that has also provided non-audit services relating to financial statement, it is not permitted. We also referred the issue of documentation. Then we referred that the audit partner failed to give a proper disclosure. Then we identified the time spent issue. We identified the fees issue. Okay. So if you look at his answer, it is not very well drafted. The fees for special investigation is very big and should be analyzed if it is 15% or more of the total revenue for welfare company. The bigger fees for special investigation, if the only company keeps that work, can be related to self-interest. Welfare company should choose between audit and non-audit work to perform as the company is listed. Okay, so here he identified some points, but again, in the examiner's perspective, it was not marked very well. Reason being that 15% benchmark is not for non-audit services only. 15% benchmark is for total revenue. He has referred the fees for special investigation is very big and should be analyzed if it is 15% of the total revenue. Now, this was some misleading statement because 15% relates to total revenue generated from a single client. Okay. The huge piece for special investigation performed by Bob could be used as an intimidation for unmodified opinion. This was a good point, that if there will be fees dependency, it will create an intimidation threat. So 1 mark was given for identification of intimidation and explanation that they may force us to give the unmodified opinion. Okay. Then if you look further, he moved towards the going concern. The going concern subject need to be assessed by a higher ranked staff that Mary, as it's a very subjective matter and doesn't appear that Mary have experience for it. So that was a good point, because Mary Lockley was the audit assistant and she was not even qualified, and she was doing review of going concern. So 1 mark was awarded for it. Okay. Going concern should be much more assessed, as it is considered as a significant risk and the group has low profit margin and losses being made. Here he should refer that only 5 contracts were reviewed. He should make it more specific. The assumptions should be more investigated than only agreed with last year papers, as the amount could be material and generate a material misstatement in financial statement. Okay, so here he referred a point that he only referred the last year assumptions. So again, 1 mark was awarded for analysis and evaluation. The candidate has effectively challenged and critically assessed the evidence supplied with appropriate conclusion. Okay, that Mary only looked at the past year assumptions. Okay, the candidate highlighted the problem of low margin and then used to support their issue that going concern is of critical importance. They explained that person completing the audit does not have sufficient experience. The assumption should be more investigated, is not overly robust, but credit would be given as they are demonstrating knowledge to the scenario and drawing conclusion. So he was awarded 1 mark for it. So this was the total marking which you got, and then 1 mark for the last year assumption. 1 mark awarded for making the point that assumptions and evidence should be robustly challenged in order to assess whether the company is going concern, that he only looked at the last year assumptions. Okay, so this was the total marking which he got, 5 marks in technical and 1 mark in profession. So if you look at both of the candidate answer and then you compare it with our script, our script is much more detailed and more comprehensive than it. We have tried and identified much extra points, and then you have to compare it with the marking scheme, that how the examiner is looking at it. See, I always say to my students that this marking scheme document is very much important. Okay, so this read the mind of marker. This document is a very important document. It is not issued for all past papers. It is only issued for this specimen paper. You should read it thoroughly for all 3 questions. Today we have just discussed question number 2 of it. We'll discuss question number 3 when we'll do the question number 3 in the recorded sessions. So you have to look at it. You have to understand both of the candidate answers. Then you have to look at the marking scheme. You have to look at my drafted answers. You have to read the notes of the examiner, that how he is giving the marks. Okay. You have to understand that you don't have to write too much. Don't copy the examiner answers. They are very much detailed. They are not written in exam pressure or time limitation. Okay. Otherwise, your time management will be missed in the examination. You will not be able to complete the paper. Okay. I hope that today's session have given you some insight that how you have to draft the answers. Still, if you have any query, feel free to ask me on my WhatsApp. See, for AAA, reading the past papers, understanding the approach, and then doing complete past papers on your own is the most important thing. Okay, we are doing this series of past paper sessions. We'll discuss 5 past papers together. I'll draft the answers, and then I want you all to attend few papers and send me for the marking and feedback. Okay, thank you everyone.